we get the note a lot, raise the stakes. If you've ever done any type of acting at all, someone has told you to raise the stakes. And what happens a lot, what we mean by raising the stakes, what we mean is raise the importance of the scene. Raise what could happen if it doesn't go well. Raise the urgency of the scene. That's usually what we mean, that the stakes are very high. In fact, as we write scripts, we tend to write every scene with a certain level of stakes. Something is at stake for each character, or else why have the scene? That means the character has something to lose or gain in every scene, just about, as we move through the plot. Okay, so the actor has to understand a sense of what the character has to lose or gain in this scene, and so we will often call that raising the stakes, and we get this note a lot. Now, what typically happens when I see or hear someone offer the note, raise the stakes, is that it is often a descriptive, it's a prescriptive note. This is something you should do, raise the stakes. What are you fighting for? Blah, blah, blah. But that's as far as we go. And what that can leave the actor doing is doing the scene faster, louder, and more intensely. So I might say my line is, I love you. And the director says, raise the stakes. So I go, I love you. I just become constipated. That's what I do. Raising the stakes is closely associated with constipation in most actors who receive the note. Because truthfully, it is not that we should raise the stakes. It's how the stakes become raised that really matters. How do the stakes become raised? So there's many ways we can do it. I want to offer one way. How can we use image and sensation to raise the stakes without thinking about it, without getting the ego involved, without pushing the urgency, without forcing the pacing, without speaking louder? Raising stakes does not mean raising the emotional quality of the scene at all. It just means that there's a part of story you don't yet believe. If the stakes are not high enough, if the urgency is not present in the body of the actor, it just means you don't have a part of the story yet. Part of the problem isn't true for you yet. Inherent in every problem is a consequence, and that consequence is not driving the dilemma yet. But how do we do this without thinking about it? So I want to talk about image and sensation as it pertains to raising the stakes. So here's what I'd like for you to do. Frankly, if the stakes don't affect your body, they're not in play. If the stakes don't affect your body, what are you doing? You're just reciting the lines, really. So here's a few ways we can think about it as it pertains to image and sensation. First, I want you to consider, I'll give you two ways. I want you to consider for your scene, for example, we'll start very basic. What happens, what's the worst case scenario for your scene, for your particular character? This doesn't go well, what's the worst thing that could happen? It's a great place to begin. And you can think about that, okay? If this doesn't go well, I could be outcast, I could live on the street, I may starve to death in this time period, whatever it is. And then I want you to consider what that is. And I want you to see, as you consider the worst case scenario, if an image emerges to you. And as I just said what I said, an image of a rat chewing at my insides just emerged to me. That I'm sitting on the streets of 18th century England or whatever, and there's piss and there's sewage in the streets, and a rat is chewing on my skin. And that's what could happen to me. And as I consider this rat chewing on my insides, like a rat crawling through vines, chewing up into my throat, I have a sensation in my body. And if this scene doesn't go well, if what I'm about to do doesn't work, then this is what's going to happen to me. I have now embodied the stakes. To raise them, I make the image more specific. I put the image in places in my body I'd prefer it not to be. And now I have something to really overcome as I walk into the room and have this conversation with her. That's one way. I can take the problem of the stakes, I can let it offer an image, I can embody the image that creates sensation, which changes the breath, and drives my problem in the scene. Another way that I can raise the stakes is to fantasize about the future. If this goes well, or if this goes poorly, these things could happen. Now, we understand fantasy in the future as it pertains to raising the stakes in the present. We understand that in life. Here's how I know that's true. Sometimes we get an audition, and we already, in our mind, we can see ourselves holding the Academy Award in our mind. Or we get the audition, and we're like, this is going to make my career. The more we invest in the future, the higher the stakes become in the present. And so, using the imagination to imagine the fantasy of what could happen can begin to create a sensation in the body. That sensation may offer itself in form of an image as well. And that will heighten the body's involvement in the hoped for future of the character. So, stakes can be extrapolated through image and problem, placed into the body and lived in, or stakes can be raised by heightening my belief in a fantasized future that creates the sensation in the body and brings me back to an image. Either one will organically and from a physical place heighten the stakes in a scene to give you a deeper sense of what the character is fighting for, all without getting in your head.